We are here with Matt Walsh from Veep. And Matt, what has it been like in the past season of Veep, being part of the Selena Meyer presidential administration?
It's been really fun. The stakes are higher. I think Mike enjoys being the face of the administration, the sort of power he has now that politicians want to talk to him, that we're ignoring him for the last 15 or 20 years. And I think also the show got broader or bigger in scope in that, like, we all kind of go off on our own now. In the first few seasons, we're swimming in Selena's wake, and now we're sort of independent satellites who kind of go on their own journey. So it's gotten much bigger. And yeah, I think it's good. I think all the new characters and the stakes are higher everywhere. There's real decisions got to be made.
Yeah, and Mike sort of got his own team this season of people like beneath him and like a much bigger like gaggle of press and stuff all around. He's like surrounded by a lot more people.
Yeah, and they built me a lovely like comms area where they have a wonderful set. Yeah, it is much bigger. And the actual White House press room is cool too, the podium and everything.
Yeah, and we sort of see Mike sort of start off like the season with a bit of a spring in his step, a bit of newfound sort of confidence and sort of like just on top of the world, and it like slowly sort of like falls apart from him as the scandals grow in the Meyer administration. What was that like sort of approaching the season, having that real sort of starting at that high point and dropping down?
It's fun. You know, they do a good job of giving Mike success or happiness. Like, so it's fun to play a different mode for that character and to see him do well and to see him enjoy himself. I mean, inevitably that Washington will drag you down, but I look forward. I get excited when there's sort of jubilation in Mike's life or when there's success. So I enjoy playing those moments a lot. And yeah, like I said, eventually something's going to pull them down or pull him down. But even though it's short-lived, I do enjoy it.
What do you think was a better fashion move? Mike's new moustache color from this season, or Selena's haircut from the season before?
Better or funnier? I think definitely the haircut is less offensive or less ridiculous than coloring your mustache bright orange.
What was Mike thinking?
I think like anyone, I think he watched himself on television, and I think he got a little vain, and he's like, oh, I got to look younger, and I got to look better. And I don't know how he came up with the cockamamie scheme that dyeing his mustache would anti-age him, but I don't think his wife helped him with that one. I think he came up with that one on his own. I think it's just saying yes to a dumb idea. I think he convinced himself that it would work great.
Do you think Mike has grown at all over the past sort of 3-4 years on Veep?
Yeah, he has. I think he's opened up his eyes to what his life is going to be. I think in the beginning seasons, he was all about Selena. He was all about getting the presidency. He was all about serving her campaign and her platform. And now as they've reached success, it's like, what else is there? And I think he's starting to see that, everyone around him, he's surrounded by people who don't have any life and they're miserable. And he's sort of playing it out forward is like, well, if she gets another 4 years or 8 years, do I really want to be doing this? Because it won't get any better. I mean, this is as high as we can go. So I think he has sort of evolved into someone who looks at all aspects of his life, whereas before he was very myopic and focused on politics. Now I think he entertains seriously the idea of quitting or getting out.
And with Mike this season, like in past seasons, we've seen such a from him, sort of like, and maybe sometimes he really is sometimes oblivious to things and doesn't know things. And in the last couple of episodes, that would have been a real benefit to Mike. And no one was more aware of this than Mike, but he couldn't avoid finding out things. How fun was that Bill episode? And sort of what was that like playing sort of all of a sudden he needs to not know anything and he can't help but hear everything?
You're talking about the recent testimony episode?
I think like the episode before the testimony, where they're wanting to kill the bill, and Mike's like sort of going, no, 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 don't, I don't want to hear this. Please, everyone, don't say anything.
Yeah, I think that's a nightmare for a press secretary, because if he has plausible deniability, then he can't be, they can't litigate against him. He can't be drawn into these congressional hearings. But so I think he sees that and knows that in the moment. He is aware of the nightmare coming down on that administration. So I think that is a real tragedy. It's either one side of the coin or the other for that job. One is, something that you shouldn't know, and then you may be called to speak about it. And then the other side is you stand in front of the press and they're grilling you about something that you have no information on, or were purposely held out of the room for those meetings. And that's another nightmare, because it looks like you're an idiot or you're ill-informed and you have no value to the press. So it's kind of like you're constantly trapped between those two poles in that position.
Yeah, and it seems like no one else in the staff cared at all. They almost like wanted as many people to know as possible, so they weren't the only ones implicated.
Yeah, I mean, Ben definitely threw people under the bus as soon as he could, because he did not want to be the single person who could be taken down with this. And it's funny to inform people you don't like. Like, I think he told Bill Erickson about it, and Gary and all these people. It's very funny to see their reaction to being implicated in this scandal. So yeah, I think that's a kind of strategy to protect yourself, is by spreading the knowledge and giving yourself other people to go down with, or possible scapegoats.
Now, you talked about the deposition episode, the testimony episode. From what I understand, you've got a very specific process to putting together Veep episodes. This one was shot and put together very differently. What was that process like for you?
It was kind of like, I don't know, like a reality show. Like, we were kept in the dark about pretty much all the other scenes in that episode. We were only given our scenes, so we only knew our part in that episode. And then we weren't allowed on set. We didn't know how many people in the room. We didn't know what we were going to be asked necessarily, or how the scene would go. So it kind of played out like a real, cross-examination from from congressmen. And it was a huge day. I think we shot like 55 pages in one day, because it was all pretty much C-SPAN setups. You have like 6 cameras, and the cameramen were dressed so they could be seen on camera as if they were, congressional aides or something. So it was kind of an experiment, like a sociological experiment, where you just had to really commit, and everybody was like in on the bit of this is really happening. So it was pretty cool. It was really cool, actually. And I had no idea, like I said, how it was going to turn out, or what other scenes were in that show. And it's also cool. I like the narrative. Like, it was a departure episode for our show, and the way the narrative was told, I thought was really interesting. Like, jumping back and forward in time and seeing scenes that imply what happened off screen, like Catherine ditching her fiance, or the decision to scapegoat Bill Erickson. It was funny to see how those cards were played slowly and how it all built.
Yeah, and for you, who is like has such a history in improv comedy, and with the UCB, and with long form improv, how are those skills tapped into for this episode? Like, more so or less so than a usual episode?
More so, absolutely more so. You were basically like thrown in the water without a life preserver, so you were sort of improvising around the scene, and moments happened where they were just going to keep rolling. It was not, you could never call cut. Once you were in there, it was going to play real and awkward and full of pauses and etc. so being an improviser helped me in that moment, and it was really fun. I think we only did 2 takes of that, quite frankly, and I'm sure the first one was better because it was completely real, and you felt like uh, almost like a prank show. I did a lot of prank shows when I started, where you're playing this reality and not everyone is in on it. It felt like you almost were being pranked when you walked in that room.
Like, and I know we've talked a bit in previous chats about like your sort of like game theory of how like everything sort of leading up to sort of the end goal, the end game, and like this episode seems so clear where it was all heading by the time like you got to those final scenes where everyone threw Bill Erickson under the bus, of like, oh, all those like little lines and bits were leading up to that sort of payoff.
Yeah, and I think that's a credit to the writers. I think they teased it out throughout the season. Obviously, the scandal was going to come down, and the way they juggled that and kept that ball in the air through the first 8 episodes was really interesting. And also, there were hints that Bill would be a likely candidate, in some of the, episode 6 or 7. I think there are times where you feel like, oh, that, because he's too perfect. He's the kind of guy that doesn't get rattled. Then you see him get rattled when the attacker gets into the White House, and you see his facade crack a little bit. So I thought the writers teed it up really well for this episode.
Do you think this season of Veep has had a different tone to previous seasons of Veep?
Tonally, I would hope that we're pretty close to the way we've always played it. Like when I think of tone, I think of the way jokes are delivered, or the way scenes are played, or the way we react to things. Hopefully we're still in that realistic pocket. But I think in scope and in stakes, the show got much bigger. It's a bigger show. There's more people around. We're often, different environments more often. We're without Selena more often. And obviously because she's president, we're negotiating peace with Iran. We're doing real things. It's not like when she was vice president. So I think the tone hopefully is consistent, but I think it just got it more expansive. I think the show became more expansive in a good way.
And you got and Hugh Laurie joined the cast this year. Like, what was that like, having him sort of entering this world of Veep and this sort of collaborative process of putting together the episodes?
There's very few people that I get starstruck by, and he is one of them. I've seen him. I loved House, the show that was on here in the States, and Fry and Laurie and Wooster and Jeeves. I was familiar with a lot of his work, and Blackadder. So it took me a few days to sort of relax and, just be a normal person around him. So that was interesting, because that rarely happens for me. But he's great. He felt like someone who wanted to fit in, and he seemed nervous about our process because he was a fan of the show and he didn't want to screw it up. Like, he was very sort of modest. Obviously he's amazingly talented, but he really was, plugged into our little our group, and was fun. We hung out, we went out together. He's a really nice guy, and it's funny to see when he goes back and forth between American and English, because he's mostly an American. Even on set, when you're not filming, he keeps his American accent going.
And if you obviously, just in case people haven't heard previous interviews or talks about the show, like the way you usually put together an episode is you get the scripts, you sort of work it, and it's reworked and rewritten, and you sort of, it's a very collaborative process. What's something what's a great moment that came out of that process this season on the show?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think. There were some tricky moments. Well, I think Tony and Selena, or Gary and Selena's they had a great scene in episode 2 where he kind of called her out. I think I remember being in the room and they sort of teased that out, so it played out more realistically, so it didn't just ramp up into Tony's character speaking his mind. I think they figured out the convoluted journey to get to that moment. I think they built some more insulting moments from Selena, which made it justified for Gary to speak up and tell her to, you know, basically shut up and listen to me. That was one moment I wasn't in, but I observed. I think one thing we tinkered with a lot in the rehearsal room is when she was sick, the episode when she was sick, and Gary was taking care of her. We had to really figure out what we could say when certain people were in the room, and also to realistically have Gary pretend that the president was talking, because that's treason, basically. He's basically making a comment on behalf of the executive of the United States, which is not true. So we had to really play that in a believable way, and also make it so Congressman Pierce believed that she was speaking so softly that no one could hear her. So we workshopped her, a lot of her bedroom scenes a lot. So the mechanics were correct, and also like the staging in the room, like me and Tom James, where we would be, and would we actually try to wake her up or would we let her sleep? Like that, we put a lot of effort in the rehearsal on that scene, so it was plausible and believable.
Oh, that's interesting. Obviously, Armando Iannucci is leaving at the end of season 4 and moving on. How do you feel about that sort of transition for the show and looking to season 5?
I'm gonna miss him. He's such a sweet guy, and he's a friend, and he's such a brilliant, talented, leader for our show. So on a personal note, he's a fun hang. He's really funny, and we go out to eat and stuff like that. So he will be missed. I will miss him a lot. So I was a little trepidatious when I heard he was going to stay back in England. He was tired of traveling overseas. But then Julia, who was a big part of the show as well, handpicked this guy Dave Mandel, who has a great pedigree. He came out of Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. And then, we set up meetings where we got to sit down with Dave and, talk about this next phase for Veep. And I feel confident that all the pieces are in place for a smooth transition. Dave's a really nice guy. The rehearsal process won't change. It'll still be a collaborative show. We can still pitch jokes at any time. We're invited to I visited the writer's room this week. And then Julia, obviously, is still the captain in a way. So I think that the leadership is still there. It's not like there's a leadership void. And then I think, honestly, the characters are so well defined that the show is up and running in a successful. It's at a successful pace. So I feel confident that we'll just keep that momentum and continue to make a good show. But it's scary. It's nervous. It's a nervous time for me, or I was nervous. But I feel good. I feel good about what's transpired already and the way the show is shaping up for next year.
Yeah, I was talking with Reed about it a couple of weeks ago, and it was like thinking about it, because usually when a show creator leaves, especially one that has such a voice like Armando, it can be felt really by the show, and I'm sure it still will. But I just wonder if this collaborative process that has been set up is something that you can more easily walk away from and it can continue.
I'm not sure what your question is. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm wondering if, because it's such a collaborative process that Armando set up, that it's an easier thing for him to walk away and you guys still be able to run with sort of the culture and environment. Yeah. That's
a good point. Yeah. If it was a true dictatorship, like he was an iron-fisted leader and never let us change a single word, then that guy leaving would be a real deficit to the show. But you're right. We've all sort of been given authorship of our characters and invited to contribute, and it's a very collaborative sort of like theater camp vibe where we just get in and do the work and nobody has an ego and we're just looking for the best joke. I think that will continue, and I think you're right. I think he created something that actually can grow in his absence, and I don't know, I don't think he set out for that when he created the show. He just wanted to create a fun process where people could contribute. But as a result of that, you're right. I think its probability of success because of the design of collaboration and interpersonal contribution. I think that helps ensure that the transition will kind of be successful. Yeah, I think that's true.
Well, we'll see next year. We'll see what it's like.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my God. And people are going to be looking at it like that. They're going to be looking at it with that eye, like, oh, Armando's gone. What's it like now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like hopefully people give it room to breathe. And
Yeah.
Like, if the first episode's a bit rough around the edges, everyone doesn't just jump all over it straight away. Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually think, obviously, Armando's amazing, and some of the British writers are coming back, so it's not a complete turnover of like everything's new. But in a way, it's like a different challenge, which actually could inspire a new growth for the show. You know what I mean? After 4 seasons, we obviously do something really well, and you don't want to just keep repeating the same thing. It won't be exciting for your viewers. So this change, or all this like reconfiguring of the dynamic in the writer's room and the showrunner, maybe that'll like have it grow in a new way that's interesting and maybe wouldn't have happened if we came back intact for season 5.
And Veep's always been a show that hasn't been afraid to reconfigure things to some degree. Who knows where you go? Well, where you're going to be left next season with whether we've got President Maya still or ex-President Maya. Like, it's hard to envision her going back to vice president now that she got through the primary process and got the nomination for whatever party she's in. So yeah, it'll be really interesting. With the Emmy Awards, your show last year grew. They got more nominations than they did the year before. You're still on the upward trajectory at the Emmys. What's that been like, that you're a show that hasn't just been nominated for Best Comedy Series every year and had members from your show win and get nominated before, but that like it's growing every year? You're getting more and more embraced.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Like we get a lot of critical acclaim and a lot of people like the show, and I do think it's sort of expanded to a larger audience. I think more civilians, people who don't vote in the Emmys, watch the show and like it. But it's also funny because I think we've kind of become perennial losers as well, which is fine. Like, we just did the Critics' Choice and nobody won, and Tony was nominated and Julia was nominated and the show was nominated. And that's fine too. It's almost like you go to these shows now and expect to not go home with a trophy. So there's some comedy in that as well.
Yeah. Sort of like, it's very in the culture of Veep, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. How perfect is it that Selena and her team show up for an event and they don't get an award? Well, yeah. Julia brings home trophies, but the rest of us.
Yeah, she always does. When do you think she'll stop winning Emmys for this role?
When? I don't know. I mean, obviously it'll happen. It just changes. But I mean, I think for as long as we do the show, her in that role has to be a contender or a nominee. She's just so good at it, and it's so interesting. And because I mean, are you in the Academy?
I'm not in the Academy. I do not get a vote. No.
Oh, you don't get a vote. Oh. No. I think people inevitably just want something new. You know what I mean? It's human nature to like order something different on the menu. So I think at some point, people, even though she may deserve it, people will just give someone else a shot at it.
Hopefully that's the mentality of the voters with Modern Family this year as well. Yeah,
they've been nominated. They've been nominated forever, and they win a lot. And I'm sure at some point people will like, well, you're as great as this show, but this show's never won, so we're going to give it to that show.
Yeah. Modern Family win this year. No show's ever won six before. They'd set the record.
Have they won 5 best shows?
Yeah, they've won 5 in a row. Equal
crazy.
Frasier. Yeah.
It's a great show. I mean, that would be a huge thing. 5. Yeah. So 5 is the record?
5's the record.
Wow. And Frasier they're tied with Frasier?
Yeah, they're tied with Frasier now, yeah.
That's funny.
So like Cheers has 4, I think Dick Van Dyke has 4.
Yeah.
And then the drama series is about 4 shows that won 4 for drama series. So
Yeah, I think for like the regular viewer, you just want your show to live on. Like, hopefully, when we all move on to different things, that the show is still respected and it ages well and it's still funny, and that's all you want. Like, obviously, who cares how many Emmys Cheers won? It's still a great show, and I'll watch it in reruns. Same with Seinfeld. You just want a show that ages well and that still delivers comedy after you're not doing it.
Yeah, let's jump around a few places now. You directed a film, A Better You, a directorial debut that debuted. Was it this year or late last year?
We had one festival at the Santa Barbara Festival, I think, in March.
Yeah,
and it'll be out on like a digital platform near you in the fall.
Yeah, what's it like directing an improvisational movie, which I believe A Better You is?
Yes, it is. It's my second. The first one I directed was called High Road, which came out like 4 years ago. So it's my second one around, and it's basically you hammer out a story, and you have 70 scenes, and underneath each scene heading, you have 3 paragraphs of description that track the emotional arc and the characters that are there, and even the props that are necessary and the emotion. And then you hopefully have a comedic game to be played in that scene, and then you cast it with the funniest people to ensure that the dialogue will be funny. And then you spend a little time rehearsing before you film, like a week before. You'll get together and improvise scenes that would never be in the movie, but create a consistent backstory and acknowledge the tone we're going for. And then on set, you just sort of rehearse the scene before you roll, and then you just cover it wide. And once you have a good version of the scene, you're not necessarily looking for a different take on or different dialogue on every take. You're just trying to execute the scene as best as you can, so you relieve the burden of like, give me something completely different every turn. If you find something that's great, then you just want to cover it accurately. And then the other trick is, don't improvise or don't encourage actors to improvise things that'll never make the cut. Obviously, there's a million ways you can go with improv, but if watching it is like, that's really funny, but we're never going to use it, you try to steer them towards improvising on story.
Yeah, it's like doing it even with Veep, but also with like stuff like A Better You. Is it like very different since you do that rehearsal process than like an improv, like just when you're doing a UCB show or something like that, where the audience will throw something at you and you just run with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's consistent with the things I've been doing for the last 20 years, which is you commit to a point of view and you understand what the reality is in which you exist, and then you hedge your bets in an improvised movie you can have jokes on set that you can pitch the actors or give them a sheet of jokes. You can also listen and show them where the comedy is, and you can also change staging, and so you can make it statistically more likely that the scene's funny when you're shooting a movie, because you can manipulate all these variables and you can control things more. Whereas in an improv thing on stage, you struggle through a lot of bad choices before you get to that funny thing. Hopefully in a movie, you've written a funny thing, and then you start there, and then you discover more funny things.
And how are things going with the UCB? Like late last year, you opened a new studio in Sunset. How are things going there?
Really good. We opened like basically a little junior college at Sunset and Western. It has like 14 classrooms on the top floor, and there's 2 theaters in the building. And then on the bottom floor, there's editing suites and podcast studios and a green screen room. So we're starting to get into production and make things that could be on television or web series. So we've grown into a very big thing, which is really cool. And there's parking on the roof in LA. You can never find parking. So that's good. The Franklin Space turns 10 years old this summer, which is mind-blowing. And then we're having our 17th annual Del Close Improv Marathon at the end of this month in New York, with like 13 stages and 1,000 teams from all over the world. So it's doing really well.
How often do you get to perform at the UCB?
I try to go once a week. There's a show, ASCAT, that's been running for like 20 years, which is basically a lot of the old guard, the regulars like me and Besser and Ian, and then some of the new people. And it's just a mix of different people with a guest monologist every week. So that's an easy show that you don't need to rehearse. You can just show up and do. So I try to do one of those a week, either Saturday or Sunday. And then people at the theater often invite me to do a show. Like once a month, I'll do a guest spot on somebody's show.
Yeah, we did. Since we last spoke, I've been to the States and I got to check out some of the UCB stuff, and it was great. It's really
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to have a theater because I can test ideas on stage whenever I want. And I did this charity event where we basically did a parody of Shark Tank. You've seen that?
Yeah.
We did a parody of that, and the people pitching ideas were people who could be awarded $1,000 for like an awesome idea to make LA better, like picking up trash or giving books to prisoners, things like teaching children to read. So we did something like that, and they all won. So it's fun to have. I guess my point is, it's fun to have like a stage where you can just book a night and do whatever you want.
Yeah, I saw I think a Shitty Jobs at Franklin and an ASCAT in New York. Yeah, so that was good.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
those are good shows. You had good luck, I hope.
Yeah, no, they were great. Ben Schwartz was in the Franklin one, and I didn't know anyone that was in the one in New York, but that was one of the funniest things I've seen.
Yeah, New York ASCAT's really funny, really funny.
Yeah, it's in tears, Matt. We got you're also in Keeping Up with the Joneses, a new movie with John Hamm and some other people. What can we look forward to with that one?
What can you look forward to? It's kind of an action comedy, and I think John Hamm plays like a secret agent, CIA type guy, and Zach just plays like I think he's like a human resources guy at a big defense firm, and it's about finding out who's leaking secrets and stuff like that. So I think it's a nice blend of good action and good comedy. And then Greg Mottola is the director, and he's great. He's really wonderful. So I'm optimistic that it'll turn out really well. And he's shooting it on film, which is crazy.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, crazy.
We've got a couple more questions.
Sure.
What is the best order? What would the best order be at Fork and Wrench?
Oh, that's a Baltimore question. Good question. The hell, I think they have some kind of tuna sashimi thing, which is amazing. And they do this sous vide. You know what sous vide is? Where you basically put meat in a warm bath of water, and that's how it cooks. So it's really like rare. And they have like a sous vide steak that is just unbelievable.
So go there and say, I'll have the sous vide steak or the tuna sashimi thing.
I believe that's the order. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. That question comes courtesy of Tim Simons, who we spoke with yesterday.
Is he really asking questions on this?
Yeah, he said, ask him what the best thing is to get at the Fork and Wrench.
That's hilarious. And a loose cannon, which is the IPA. Delicious.
He was also asking if you could do your thinking face. He thinks you've got the best thinking face. Can you do it and say something, Matt, just so the camera goes to your face when you're...
Sure. I'll have to think about that. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. I don't know if that's a good idea.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, if we've done nothing else, we've pleased Tim Simons.
I love, how does he has 2 children. How does he have time to do a Google Hangout in the middle of the day?
I don't know. He's great. He was worried that his kitchen wasn't clean enough and we could see into it. That was his biggest concern. But no, he seemed good. He seemed good. How are your dogs going, Matt? Are they going okay?
They're good. They're not around. I'd love to. Roger, Sarah. Roger. Sarah. I don't know where they are. They're probably, maybe they're out in the backyard. Hold on a second.
Okay.
They do want to make an appearance. Hold on.
Okay, great. We need the Matt dog appearance. So we have Matt Walsh from Veep, who's gone to go get his dogs, so we can check in with them, see how they're doing.
Oh my God. Oh God. I hope they didn't run. I hope they didn't run away. I don't know where they are right now.
Okay, breaking news. Matt Walsh has lost his dogs.
That's gonna trend.
Yeah,
that will definitely trend.
Yeah, we'll touch back. We did, and due to your request, we did ask Tony Hale last year about the show he did with Pamela Anderson. He was not too impressed that you asked us to ask him about that. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's unfortunately we didn't get an interview in with him before you this year. You got him.
He can ask. He can email me any questions he wants if he has any follow-ups.
It's nice to know you're on email terms with Tony Hale.
Not to brag.
Yeah. So anyway, I better let you get away to find your dogs, Matt. Thanks so much for spending time with us again this year. All the best with Veep and the Emmys, and we'll speak to you next year.
Awesome. And let me know if you have when you get to LA or if you have problems getting into the UCB.
No, we'll do. No worries, man. Bye.
Cheers.